You all know the state of play going into this North London derby. Arsenal just drew to Brighton. We want to put that right, but we've got a midfield missing. Marino, Rice and Ødegaard all unavailable through suspension and injuries, but Tottenham going to this North London derby in pretty mediocre form, losing at Newcastle, drawing at Leicester, but smashing Everton 4-0. So we still don't quite know what we're going to get from them. I've had a little look at some of the games that they've played this season, and I've looked at what Arsenal could put out there, tried to predict what Arteta's going to go with for this game, and tried to break down tactically how Arsenal can win this North London derby. But I think to do that, first we've got to look at what worked last season, because Arsenal are, two on the bounce at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We have won our last two North London derbies away from home. We're unbeaten in 4, so clearly Arteta and Arsenal are doing something right in these games. I even think the one we drew, we probably deserved to win at the Emirates when you look at some of the chances in that first half. So Arsenal are doing something right, and we don't want to move miles away from what's worked, but we've got to understand that we're in a different position, and they will certainly have evolved a little bit after the very recent defeats in these derbies. Now, let's go first to the 11 that we had in this game, Arsenal versus Tottenham at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. These are the two 11s, and what Arsenal did, knowing that the likes of Davis and the likes of Porro can get really high up the pitch and run into these channels, we just made sure to drag the likes of Saka and Trossard deep with them. We know we defend in a 4-4-2, so Ødegaard and Havertz were the front two. Havertz was dropping really deep, in fact, to help. Rice and Partey were quite condensed as well, and it was a really, really condensed structure with White and Tomiyasu happy to go across and cover the fullback. So while we were a little bit stretched as a back four, we were very, very condensed as a midfield four, almost having this shield of, it's actually quite funny when we look at it, it's almost a shield of 6 before you get to the centre-backs. Arsenal did a really, really good job of not only maintaining that shape and make it difficult for Tottenham to overwhelm us in tight areas, which we know they can do really, really well, but what we also did at times was deploy a little bit of a man-to-man press. So if Kulusevski did float inside, Tomiyasu was happy to follow him all the way at times as well, honestly picking up central areas, and if Porro was hugging the touchline, Trossard would go with him. We didn't mind going man for man because we backed ourselves physically. I think that's a really important thing to remember, that Arteta does really put physical demands on his players in big games. I think that's something to remember when we're trying to predict the 11 that he's going to go for. Now let's just go to some of the numbers from that game, because in deploying this kind of shape and this kind of tactical setup, it meant that we conceded a lot of the things that we normally want, like possession, like having more shots, like being overall dominant in terms of the eye test and the stats. When you look at some of the attacking data that we broke down on Tactical Insight last year, me and Graham, you can see that Tottenham had way more final third entries, they had more deep touches, they got in and around the zone 14 area far more times with 18 to our 8, and then a 65.4% field tilt. Now field tilt measures all the kind of actions and data actions that happen on each side of the pitch to get an idea for basically how much football is played on either side, and a lot more was played in Tottenham's attacking half, where Arsenal were having to do a lot of defending. And Arsenal deployed a shape that stifled them. When you look at the goals, one was an error from Raya and the other was a penalty, so while Tottenham had some chances, you could also argue the 2 goals they got were sort of Arsenal's own doing. And actually it was a good game plan. Ultimately, while it was a 3-2 and at times it was tight, I think the general consensus coming out of it was Arsenal deserved to win that game, because tactically they deployed a game that stopped Tottenham doing what they do best, and Tottenham had no answers for Arsenal. And there were lots of other things that we did really well in that game. We were really, really good from set pieces, scoring 2 goals. One was an own goal and another was from Kai Havertz, and we were good in transition as well. In fact, if I show you the average positions, you can see that in transition we wanted to make sure we had something, because Bukayo Saka was one of the highest players up the pitch, with Martin Ødegaard too. 2 players that can sort of make things happen in that final third. Ødegaard as well leading the press, but Havertz making sure to drop back, and as you saw with that raking pass to Saka, he was able to play that kind of pass that got us from one end of the pitch to the other. Having almost conceded a penalty, we go and score, and we're 2-0 up. So what is my prediction then for the 11, keeping that in mind? Well, here we've got 2 predict 11s for both sides. I think Basuma and Sarr come back in for Tottenham. I think Van de Ven's going to be fit, which means Romero will partner him, and I imagine Solanke will be fit and will start as well. Now, if we look at Arsenal, I've gone for Havertz dropping into midfield. Now, we've used this before away at Newcastle. We lost the game 1-0. We didn't play badly. Defensively, we were very solid. We certainly didn't have the attacking fluidity, control, creativity that you would like, especially when that right 8 is meant to be the creative spark in the team that Ødegaard would be. But with Jesus likely to return, I think he will return for this game, or at least be on the bench, and the other missing players, I'm expecting Jorginho to come alongside Partey as well, but play as the left 8 like he did in the game against Liverpool at home in the 3-1 win. We played brilliantly. If you want an analysis on that, I talked about it in this video here, where I talked about why he was so suited to that role. But I just have a feeling that Arteta, yes, there's an argument for Nwaneri to start. And the big argument is a quote that Arteta gave actually to me in a press conference when I asked him why Ben White was starting right back and Timber centre back in the pre-season friendlies. His answer was to make as little changes as possible, which meant keeping White at right back. Now that's the argument for having Havertz up front and therefore Nwaneri in central midfield. But as much as that might be a philosophy of his, he also really values physicality and he really values seniority. I think he's going to go for Havertz as the right 8 to ensure a couple things. Firstly, that there is physicality in this midfield 3. And I think with Havertz in there, for all his faults, right, as a midfielder, there's no doubt he gets involved in the duel winning, and alongside Partey and Jorginho, he adds a little something there. Also means in Jesus, yes, he's not 6'4" like Havertz, but he does have a physicality leading the line that you don't lose massively by using him instead of a Havertz. And I'll also add, it means you've got sort of width in Martinelli and Saka to run off a Jesus. I know Havertz links the play well, but when we lose possession, or when we concede possession even, Havertz can press as a front 2 with Jesus, and you can almost have that 4-4-2 off the ball shape that we know Arsenal deploy. When they're happy to concede possession, they'll drop into this shape, and then that starts to look a lot more normal. Havertz is basically leading the line alongside Jesus in the press. You still want him to be a part of that, and you haven't conceded too much in terms of physicality. And I could also see him getting into these areas, into goal-scoring areas, by combining with Jesus when we have the ball as well. So that's my predicted 11. Is it what I'd go for? I think I'd be tempted to go for Trossard in the right 8, so you can keep Havertz up front, but I understand that's a little bit lightweight. And I think that he's going to want to get the defensive solidity, the defensive platform right first before he does much else. Timber will start at left back for me. I don't think there's any sort of debate there unless there's an injury or unless he really wants Zinchenko to try and give us control of that midfield. But I'm not sure that's the direction it's going to go in. So let's talk about a few more things in terms of Tottenham's weaknesses and where Arsenal can get at Spurs. Now, I think the headline is just high line, so make sure you've got pace in behind. And I understand that, and that is true. And I think Arsenal should try and exploit that. But I think the big question is specifics, it's details. How do you exploit that? How does that work? Well, let's have a little look at one of the goals that they've conceded recently. And we can actually make all this a little bit smaller. Here we go. So this is Joe Linton on the ball. I haven't illustrated the Newcastle players, but it's Joe Linton on the ball. And we've got here Murphy about to make a run, Isak making a run. But what's interesting about this is that the positions of the two players is actually in between centre-back and full-back and centre-back and full-back. I think you can get good run on just by running directly through the centre-backs. But I think the reality is that because their full-backs get so high up the pitch, the centre-backs can be split at times. That might leave sort of a temptation to run centrally. But the big thing is not to get drawn into that central space and actually attack the areas that the full-backs are leaving because they are so committed to their attacking duties. What we see is, let's see if we can show you here, Joe Linton on the ball, and he threads a ball into Murphy. Now I've done something kind of it's very subtle, and I've tried to show it in a way it's quite difficult to recreate. But we just take it to the start. Udogie tracks the runner Murphy, Dragusin tracks the runner Isak, and Porro tracks Isak as well with a recovery run, but Romero instead is almost shuttling across. He's almost shuttling across thinking that either his defence is going to come with him, or he's maybe worried about the player that's behind Basuma, or I don't know what it is, but he just does a little movement to the right, and it just opens up the space. He doesn't, for some reason, kind of shuttle across, make sure that there isn't that simple pass through, and that if they do attempt it, either Udogie gets across or Romero blocks it before it does. And it's a really, really weird choice from Romero. Now, it might be a subtle thing, and you might blame other players, maybe Udogie's the wrong side, whatever, but it's a little bit of a trend I've noticed earlier with Romero, because if we go to the Vardy goal, when Leicester equalised against them, Christensen has the ball here, and as the ball comes into the box, Romero's come across to help Porro. Now already I think he doesn't need to be that far wide because Porro's there, but he's come across and there's he was following Vardy, so whatever, you kind of forgive that. The ball comes into the box from Christensen, tickled over Reed, narrowly misses it, and it's going to come out to Vitawi. Now the worst thing about this defending from Romero is that if he looks up, Vardy's in front of him, like he knows where Jamie Vardy is, and he can actually see the whole penalty area. But it comes back to Vitawi, who sets himself. Romero is making his way back into the box, but he gets distracted by deckled over Reed, who Sal's already marking. Almost steps across too much, and Vardy's got all the space in the world as Porro is desperately trying to recover to nod it into the back of the net, and Leicester equalised. So yes, there's a high line that Arsenal can exploit, but Romero and Van de Ven can actually get their bodies in front and nick the ball and are quite good on the intercept. Is there something we can do where their fullbacks get high up the pitch that allows us just to peel off slightly and then attack them in that space that it seems, from centre-back to fullback is maybe a little bit of a blind spot for defenders, and maybe it's proven a little bit of a blind spot for Romero. Now, for Tottenham fans watching this who are going to get upset with me, let me just say this. Romero had a really good game in the North London derby last year in the 3-2 win. He scored the goal and I actually thought he was one of their better players on the day. So Romero gets up for these games. I've got no doubt he might even be more focused than ever to try win a derby. He's a World Cup winner. He's started in the Argentina team. I've got no doubt there's a very good player there who's played in bigger games than this. But is there something there in terms of some form he's carrying into this game that Arsenal could try and exploit? And if they're going to do that, Arsenal, then it's really important, if we go back to the predicted 11s, that, and we'll make the players a little bit bigger, that these players here, Martinelli and Saka, are allowed to play on that shoulder and be available, like Murphy was in that goal, like Isak's run was, like Vardy was when he scored. But also, if you remember, Vardy had a really good chance to put Leicester 2-1 up in that game, where again, he peeled off the shoulder, rolled the ball in behind, and he's off to get a shot on his left foot, and it's well saved. That is the area that I think Spurs are they're gettable at. And we kind of saw that, didn't we, with Saka's goal when he put us 2-0 up in the North London derby last season. So when I'm looking at Arsenal exploiting this tactically, and look at the team we've got, first and foremost, I don't think this has been working, which is basically asking Timber to invert. Now, ignore Jorginho and the other players, who normally be Rice and Ødegaard, but I don't think this has really worked for Arsenal. What I do think has worked, though, in big games in 2024 is our fullback hugging the touchline, the six dropping in to be a part of build-up, and them linking with a box midfield created by these four. The 10, the 9, and then the 2 6s, or the 6 and the 8, however you want to call it. The 2 midfielders and the 2 more central forward players. That's the box midfield. That's how they've been creating sort of possessional dominance. If that's a word, I think it is. What I can see Arsenal doing is, rather than having Martinelli on the touchline, actually let's clear that for a sec, rather than having Martinelli on the touchline, trying to be a part of build-up and trying to get the ball to feet and attack someone like Pedro Porro, I'd love to see if Jesus can drop into build-up, which he always does. Jorginho can come and help Timber. We know that Havertz, Partey, all they're going to come across. And when the ball is on this side of the pitch here, and we just move the Tottenham players up the pitch, let's say they're pressing, I don't know, something like this. I'm just sort of making it up, but you get my idea. When this is happening, can the combinations be between the likes of Jorginho, Jesus, Gabriel, Timber, allowing Martinelli to just be that 1, 2, 3 passes in behind? Can we ensure that, yes, I know when we're out of possession, we're not going to leave our wingers right up the pitch. That's not how Arteta likes to set up his defensive shape. But can he have them in possession in a way where they're just hanging on the shoulder, they're tempting the press, they're baiting the press from Tottenham, thinking that a Porro or someone can nick in, and then actually we're a couple passes away from getting Martinelli in behind. I'd love to see if Arsenal could deploy that for this game and try and just find a way to get Saka and Martinelli through on goal really quickly, like we did well in last season's derby, but we did it well on the Saka side, on the Martinelli side, or Trossard or Sterling could start. That's the other thing. Sterling might be the perfect player to try and get the most out of that exact position for Arsenal. So would you start him in this derby? Let me know in the comment section below. I think what I've said there is very particular and very intricate. It's a very one-off situation. But I guess the overarching point is, don't invert Timber. So you've got plenty of players to move out wide and being built up out wide. We know that Tottenham are really condensed centrally. Stretch them, open the pitch, and instead of Martinelli being a part of that build-up, see if he can be a part of, the running in behind. See if he can just be on the end of things a lot more like he was in the 22-23 season, where he was causing absolute havoc. And a player like Jesus coming over and being a part of build-up there might help significantly. Let me know if you know what I'm talking about in the comment section below, if I'm explaining myself well enough. Now, for everything I've just mentioned there, like I said, it's easy for me to go, well, Tottenham aren't great at this, so we should do that, blah, blah. They're going to have strengths in other areas. And I think Romero, being a big game player, is one of them. Van de Ven's recovery pace is another. The just way that they can overwhelm midfield and have constant rotations and movements from fullbacks to number 10s or whatever is really, really impressive as well. I think that's something that Arsenal certainly struggle with, or any team can really struggle with that, which is why Arteta wants to set up to nullify it. But I also think another big almost weapon that they've added in these first 3 games has been set pieces. Because if I just show you this, Tottenham in the 24-25 season ranked first for the amount of shots they've had from set pieces. They ranked second for set piece XG accumulated, third for the percentage of their shots that have come from set pieces, and fourth in the league for the amount of XG that's been accumulated from set pieces as well. Set pieces has been a massive thing for Tottenham already this season, with Romero scoring. But it's not just set pieces, crosses. Look at the goal that Porro scored against Leicester. They've been able to actually, from wide areas, conjure up some magic, whether it be crosses, corners, whatever, and get into really good attacking areas using their head and causing problems for the opposition. Is that something, again, that Arsenal to be wary of? Because last season the narrative was Tottenham can't defend crosses and set pieces. Arsenal score a load of goals from them, but we might have to be careful of stopping them doing the same to us. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope that was detailed enough and I've explained myself. It's kind of difficult because obviously we've only got 3 games of league action to sort of judge Tottenham on. Arsenal, we don't know what they're going to do with the midfield, but that's my predicted 11, and that's what I think we're going to get from Tottenham and Arsenal in the game. I've been floating to a 2-1 win and a 2-2, but I don't think we're going to lose, so why not? Let's be positive a couple of days before and say we'll win it 2-1, but I think it'll be a tricky game. Interested to see what Arteta goes with for it as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What would you like to see? What are your score predictions? And are you confident of a big derby win?